Welcome to Life in the Fast Lane, your weekly NASCAR handicapping show. I'm your host, Steve Merril, and we are live Wednesday, June 24th at our normal time right now, 2 p.m. Eastern here on Wager Talk TV. And we're going to recap the Talladega race from this past Sunday. And more importantly, we're going to handicap the Pocono races. And yes, I said plural races because we have back-to-back Saturday, Sunday events in the Cup Series at Pocono this weekend. It's really an excellent opportunity to make some money because we haven't had practice sessions, but we're going to have a full race to analyze, and then we can handicap Sundays right after that. So be sure to watch this show. Be sure to stay tuned all episode. We're going to get to some excellent driver recommendations and some free head-to-head matchups as well for Pocono this weekend later in the show. First, we're going to recap Talladega. Just a reminder, we'll be back next week, our normal time, July 1st, next Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, our normal time here on this channel. Let me bring in my two expert NASCAR handicappers and guests, as always, Andy Lang and Rocky Atkinson. And before I bring them in, I want to let all the viewers out there know we have a tremendous offer this week for all you NASCAR fans and NASCAR bettors. A 50% discount off the next 12 months of NASCAR picks, a full calendar year until next summer for these two excellent NASCAR handicappers. And here's what you got to do. You got to use a very special promo code, Moto 50%. I'm going to spell it out here. It's a little complicated. MOTO 50% sign. Now, I believe it's showing here on the YouTube channel as well on the screen. But that's a very important promo code. It's the best promo code we've used all season. Moto 50%. MOTO 50% sign. MOTO 50%. And that gets you half price for the next 12 months of NASCAR picks. Andy Lang at wagertalktv.com. I'm sorry, wagertalk.com. Andy Lang, wagertalk.com. Rocky Atkinson, sportsmemo.com. Sportsmemo.com. MOTO 50% gets you half price for 12 months. Andy, let me bring you in first. I know you're excited about this promo code. We'll get your thoughts on Talladega, but what a fantastic offer, 50% for the next 12 months of NASCAR picks.
That's not till the end of this year. That's 12 months. That's crazy. So I don't make the decisions on the prices. Those are the higher ups. Take advantage. So that price is great for either me or Rocky. Actually, probably both. You're getting half off. You might as well get both of us. That's what I've done with some of the handicappers on Wager Talk. If I preach that I think people should buy our picks and make money, I do the same thing. I buy other handicappers' picks on Wager Talk, and it's absolutely worth it. So I do what I preach.
Yeah, and Rocky, I know you and Andy keep in touch all week long, every week, and you discuss your NASCAR picks and you handicap with each other. So there is some value in having both of you there. And basically, I think some of the viewers out there probably debated, do I get Andy? Do I get Rocky? You get both of them now for one price because it's half price for each of you. You can have both of your selections, not for the rest of the season, but for half of next year as well. Rocky, fantastic offer. MOTO 50%. MOTO 50%. And Rocky, in these races, I predicted there would be one in this, which is the safest bet you can make nowadays on these restrictor plate tracks. But what a fantastic finish. Eric Almirola finishes third, going backwards over the finish line. I've told my friends who don't follow NASCAR, just watch the last 5 minutes of Talladega if you want to see something in that play out once again.
Well, I think it was typical today. The big one, unless you count the very end of big one, which I don't. For those viewers who big one, I don't think we had the big one this race. This race always keeps you on the edge of your seat, the whole race, if you know anything about it. Team Penske dominated all day. Seemed like every time you look, Blaney, Keselowski, Logano was 1, 2, 3. Stenhouse had another great day at Talladega, finishing second, only like less than 12 inches from finishing first. He was my long shot to win here on the show. Johnson wasn't interested in going to the back of the pack, as we discussed on the show last week. He was up there battling, competing at the front all the day. Newman, however, was interested in going to the back, and I don't think he had any desire to get mixed up in anything on this massive track after his terrible wreck at Daytona. Stewart-Haas, they seem to be the only team that actually went to the back. I think Harvick, he kind of mixed it up a little bit at the front for a while, but then he also went to the back with Boyer and Almirola. Tyler Reddick, he won stage 1. Stenhouse won stage 2. Ryan Blaney, won the overall race in overtime, exciting fashion, beating Stenhouse, as we said, by approximately 12 inches or less. And as you said, Almirola goes across the finish line backwards, who was my top 5% play over William Byron. So I did cash that. I did drop my other play, which was Johnson over Byron. Johnson caught back up to him at the very end, was right on his bumper, but couldn't get the pass. So I went 1-1, but we plussed out money.
Yeah, and a takeaway for me too, Rocky, was that Reddick was strong again. We've all been talking about how he's just a power as a rookie this year, especially on these oval, regular cookie cutter tracks, and he's leading the stage here in Talladega in one of his first Cup starts. So just another, it's hard to take much away from Talladega that translates obviously to Pocono or any of these oval tracks coming up. But the fact that Reddick was strong again on a totally different type of track, it's going to be really hard to leave him off any of these cards, I think, going forward. Andy, I'll get your thoughts on Talladega. I know we can't take too much away from it overall for these future tracks, but we will have, I believe, Daytona still at some point this year. I have to check the schedule. I mean, I'm pretty sure we have another race at Talladega and Daytona most likely if they're keeping to the normal format. So we will have a couple more restrictor plate tracks to use some of this data on. Great points by Rocky. Andy, anything else you were looking at there that you that caught your eye at Talladega?
No, it just seems like the Penske cars are coming alive.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Talladega seemed like it was it didn't have the feel of a restrictor plate race. I mean, they were all bunched together, but we didn't have the chaos until the very end. And the Penske cars, they've looked great throughout the last few races, and they looked great at Talladega. I expect more of the same. The Hendricks cars looked great earlier. After the break, they seem to be fading. Penske cars moving forward. That was the biggest takeaway for me. I mean, they were the most organized team by far. They linked up whenever they had a chance. They held back. They moved forward together. So it was actually kind of fun to watch a team work really hard the way that they did. And then, it paid off. They got the win.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the same point about Penske. I'd said going in, I thought they were the team to beat. But what's interesting, Andy, where were we saying that also? Was it Bristol, I think, or maybe Martinsville? One of those short tracks, we were saying how strong they were a couple races ago. And now we go to a completely different type of track, a 2.5 mile super speedway, and they were the team to beat again. And I thought it was very obvious what they were doing most of that race. They were running 1, 2, 3. They were lined up working together. So my big takeaway, viewers, from the Talladega race for future plate tracks is you're going to have the Penske cars. Blaney wins it. Keselowski has 5 career wins there. Logano was my top car coming in. He's been the best restrictor plate driver for several years now. And they ran well, and they ran together, which is going to make them even tougher to beat. So I think when we look at Daytona and Talladega later this year, that'll be my first takeaway, is that Team Penske is what we're going to have on our radar and in our lineups. I actually had a head-to-head with Logano over Keselowski just because the more I looked at it during the week. These are random races, but Logano has been incredible on these tracks. And he very well could have been the car to beat again, kind of got positioned out there late, which is what happens. But I thought he was as strong as anybody, maybe even stronger than Blaney. By the way, Blaney wins back-to-back Talladega races. He won last fall, won this one. He won them both by exactly 7 1/1000ths of a second, back-to-back races. So that's how incredibly random this could be. And before we get to Pocono, I guess we got to get to the Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Award, and we definitely can't give it to him this week because he finished second and missed out by a nose, missed out by 7 1/1000ths of a second. Now, I guess I could nominate Stenhouse Jr. for losing by 7 1/1000ths of a second. That might be very fitting. But yeah, it's amazing how well he runs. And Almirola, of course, finishes third, as we mentioned, finishing backwards. The two guys we said in the show last week that are very good on this track compared to other tracks is Stenhouse and Almirola. So it's ironic to me, guys, as random as this race is and as difficult it is to handicap, you do get the usual suspects: Logano, Stenhouse, Almirola. They all ran very well. Blaney wins again. Chase Elliott was a guy I liked a lot. He won the spring race last year. He was running very well. In fact, when he got wrecked out of the race, he was running fourth, I believe. So he's another guy that we do have to mention. I don't have any great nominees. I mean, one thing I was going to say was early in the race, there's a little bit of caution simple. We didn't have the big one. We didn't really have anybody causing problems. So, yeah, not as many great nominees as I was hoping. I'll start with you, Rocky. What was someone you were looking at maybe as a Stenhouse Unforced Error Award winner?
I'm with you. It's very tough to call this week. I'm going with Chase Elliott. Elliott's running third or fourth. Got a push from Keselowski. Logano jumped in front of him. I think Keselowski might have bumped him again, and it spun him out. He had nowhere to go. I think Kevin Harvick was up beside him. Austin Dillon nailed him, and that's one of the reasons I'm going with Elliott. Both cars were out of the race. Austin Dillon I had on the show over William Byron, so that cost me my pick on the show, which was very rare losing pick for me here on the show. But the bad thing was William Byron was flying by, and he almost nailed Elliott as he spun. Had he nailed him, then I would have swept my premium picks. And who knows, Austin Dillon might have finished ahead of him as well. So I'm going to go with Chase Elliott.
Yeah, I liked Austin Dillon a lot. He's run very well on these restrictor plate tracks, even better at Daytona. But I liked him. Some of the fantasy lineups, I had Chase Elliott and Dillon strong, so that killed me. The two of them basically shot my day as far as the fantasy lineups for that reason. One guy we didn't mention on the show, but the more I looked at him later in the week that does very well here is actually Ty Dillon, and he had another good run. So that's something to keep in mind for the future tracks at Daytona and Talladega. But, yeah, I think Chase Elliott and Austin Dillon were the two that probably were running better and should have finished better. So I think I could nominate both of them, actually. Andy, what are your thoughts? Who deserves it this week?
Oh, I got a bunch of them. Pretty close to what you're saying about the Chase Elliott wreck. Did you catch? So Brad Keselowski runs into Logano, who runs into Chase Elliott. There's a million cameras on the track, and Brad Keselowski goes, "I think Stenhouse pushed me into it." Yeah. And then they cut to the replay. Stenhouse is nowhere near him. It's like, Brad, there's cameras all over the place. You can't blame Stenhouse for that. So there was that. There was an atrocious Hooters commercial. I don't know if you guys caught the Hooters commercial where they showed the girl getting ready for work, and she goes into Hooters and she's wearing a mask, and they're talking about how they're open for business, and the first table she waits on is a husband and wife who if my wife wanted to go out to eat and Hooters was the first place I took her to after quarantine, I wouldn't be married anymore. That was great. I have Jeff Gordon and the NASCAR announcers trying to be really positive about the weather when it's raining in turn one. Like, no, it's just going to pass. And it's like, no, it's a swimming pool, turn one. So them trying to be weather announcers. I also have CNN tries to do a story on Bubba Wallace. Their graphics department doesn't get it right, and they put his name as Bubba Watson, the golfer. That was just a great one. I have Ryan Blaney's facial hair after the race. It looked like it was half cut by a beard trimmer, half cut by a broken weed whacker. Like, here it was all messed up. Here it was perfect. Here it was a bush. And then did you guys catch Mike Joy? When the NASCAR announcers, when they go around and they say who they think is going to win, and they're like, well, I like Chase Elliott. He's
Brendan
in second.
Poole.
Brendan Poole. Mike Joy goes, I wanted to pick Brendan Poole. Just so sarcastically, and everyone's like, Brendan Poole? And he was like, yeah, he was running fourth, but now he dropped back. He's in 26th. And then Brendan Poole wrecks a couple laps later. I have that one as my favorite. Mike Joy sarcastically saying he picked Brendan Poole to win Talladega. That's my nominee. That's my favorite.
Yeah, that's tough because it's going to be hard to give it to Mike Joy the other week. I did catch that as well. And he said Brendan Poole, he said it really serious. I couldn't tell if he was kidding or not. And then, I think he cut a tire like 2 laps after that. But he didn't pick him. If you technically picked him, I think we would have to give it to him. I like the Bubba Watson. I'd love to have a reason to give it to CNN, actually. But,
I say let's do it because they went all in on it, and they have just a completely wrong name up there. All right, yes, let's do it. This is great. CNN does a story on Bubba Wallace, and their graphics department puts up Bubba Watson. I love it. It's great.
It's funny you say that, too, because, we have to tread lightly on the subject. But the last couple races, it's not an unforced error, but I think it's a very overforced topic that NASCAR is trying to really, the whole thing before the race, the last couple of weeks, Watson with the crowd afterwards, Wallace. See, now you got me doing it, Andy.
Yeah, unforced error.
Unforced error. But it is all over the place, almost to where it seems a little fake to me at this point. So I think it's great that we give it to CNN, that they're being fake about it probably too, and they can't even get the name right. So,
as a guy that runs a video production company and I edit TV shows, graphics, getting names right are essential, and to get an athlete's name wrong.
But it also shows how little they probably really care about the story or about the sport, and that's what bothers me.
So bad. They missed the sport. They
everything.
everything.
When is CNN ever? Do you think they even say the date? They probably don't even mention the Daytona 500 winner that night on the news when they're on 24/7.
No.
So, yeah, I think that's a good one. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm getting worked up over this because I think it's really fake. And the fact they couldn't even get it spelled correctly just shows how fake it is.
So bad. And I got to say, for our last race of the year, we're going to do the Ricky Stenhouse Unforced Error Award of the race. I have them all here. I've been keeping track of them. And it is a stacked field. Field.
Well, I'll tell you, it was tempting to give it to Chase Elliott because we all three had him on our list, and he probably did deserve it, and he might not win it elsewhere. But didn't we give it to him already? We gave it to a big name guy. We already gave it to Elliott.
Yeah, it was when he wrecked Joey Logano while battling for the lead, and then he said he had a tire going down.
Yeah, so actually we already gave it to Elliott because I was thinking this would be one of the few chances Elliott would win it, but he actually could very well have two this year. So we'll give it to CNN basically to do him a favor because he's been running too well this year to have two Unforced Error awards this early. So CNN, congratulations. I'm sure they're watching, and I'm sure this will make a clip on their show tonight. So it'll be good for our show as well.
Great.
Hey, CNN, if you do mention our show tonight, be sure to mention promo code MOTO 50% because the viewers can save some serious money for the next 12 months. Yeah, Rocky and Andy, half price off either or both. Get them both for the price of one. MOTO 50% sign. MOTO 50% sign. You can tell I love this code. It's fantastic to mention over the air. Moto 50%. Hopefully the viewers got that. But hey, look, half price the next 12 months in NASCAR. Andy Lang at wagertalk.com. Rocky Atkinson, sportsmemo.com. MOTO 50% sign. Guys, let's get to Pocono. I'm excited about the Pocono race. Normally, this is probably the worst track on the circuit. One of my favorite stories from a guy I do some media with is whenever we talk about this race every week on his show, he always says, I have a friend 10 years ago, never been to a NASCAR race. And he goes to Pocono for the first time and thought how god-awful it was. And I was like, yeah, Pocono is probably not the best track to go watch your first NASCAR race. It's a 2.5 mile. First of all, when it's a tri-oval, you know you're in trouble because there's only 3 turns. It's a very unusual track. It's very flat. Really no other tracks to compare it to. I mean, obviously Phoenix is a 1 mile flat track. Martinsville's a 1/2 mile flat track. So I'm really interested to get your guys' takes on other tracks that you look at, if any. But what I do like about Pocono this weekend is that we have back-to-back races on Saturday and Sunday. So we'll be going in a little blind on Saturday, but we should have some tremendous data to use on Sunday. It'll be a very quick turnaround. But some good data. Rocky, what are your thoughts going into Pocono? And maybe give me a driver as well.
All right. Like you said, Pocono is a 2.5 mile tri-oval. There's no other track like this track on the circuit. The only one that's close, in my opinion, might be Indianapolis. And y'all might disagree with
that's a good call. No, that's right. I agree with you there. Yeah.
Yeah. These cars are going to come in with different gear setups. According to how they've done in the past, probably each team probably won't have each car for each team won't have the same setup most likely. So very tough track for these drivers to figure out the exact setup and the crew chief and everything. One guy I'm gonna look at is Brad Keselowski. Keselowski, he has 1 win here, 10 top 5 finishes, 12 top 10 finishes in his 20 races here in Pocono. His average finish is 11.1 at this track, which is 4th best among all active drivers. Keselowski has 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s the past 2 years Pocono with an average finish of 13.3. Keselowski is also the hottest driver on the circuit right now over the past 10 races with 2 wins, 7 top 10 finishes, and an average finish of 7.8.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm glad you mentioned Indianapolis. You're exactly right about that, Rocky. That's the sister track to this one. And in most seasons, they run them back to back even sometimes. And we do see the same drivers do quite well at both, the same setups. First of all, they're the only 2.5 mile flat tracks. Daytona and, of course, Talladega are 2.5 mile, but they're huge banking on those super speedways. California's a 2 mile and Michigan's a 2 mile, but it has a lot more banking. So I wouldn't necessarily look at those as much. But yeah, Indianapolis is definitely the sister track. to Pocono. And Keselowski, is good on these types of tracks, but more importantly, he's a great strategist. He's got a lot of strategy, and these often come down to fuel mileage races. One thing we forgot to mention about Talladega, by the way, is that was very close to being a fuel mileage race. And I thought that was ironic that, Keselowski does well there. It's usually never a fuel mileage race, and it became one almost. And Blaney actually was going to benefit from that and kind of did. But, actually, something we forgot to mention, the Talladega recap, it's probably one of the reasons Blaney and those guys were up there, because they were saving fuel. So Logano was running second, but basically they all had to pit. So I completely forgot about that aspect to it. Another thing that made that finish a little misleading. But now we're at a track, 2.5 mile flat track, Andy, that can be completely fuel driven. And Keselowski is very good at strategy, and he's very good at fuel races, pit strategies. So I think he's worth a look for that reason. Another guy that's very good on flat tracks and also is good with fuel strategy, I want to mention before I forget, is Denny Hamlin. I've seen him do well in this type of situations. So those are two guys I think to look at. Andy, what are your thoughts on Pocono? I think Rocky brought up a great point about Indianapolis. I forgot to mention that. And what are some drivers you're looking at as well?
I have 3 head-to-head matchups that I really like this week. Those are going to be on wagertalk.com. Eric Jones is a guy who absolutely loves this place. He was great here last year. Average finish 2.5, so he had 2 top finishes right near the top 5. He's not been great this year, but some of these finishes have been unlucky at Homestead. He was running top 6 and he had that flat tire. So I like Eric Jones. It's a little bit of, they've really messed up the setup several times on his car and some of the other Gibbs cars. But Gibbs cars, the last 2 races at Pocono, 3 drivers average finish inside the top 5. That's Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, and Eric Jones. So if you're looking at a track with no practice and you're looking at past results, the Gibbs cars seem to have a really good setup here. I'll contrast that with Hendrick's cars. The last 4 races, only 1 driver with an average finish inside the top 10, and that's William Byron of all guys. So it seems like Hendrick's cars struggle with this setup. Gibbs cars really excel. We talked about, sometimes pay attention to the team, sometimes not. But at this track, it was pretty glaring when doing the research that Gibbs cars may have a pretty big advantage when there's no practice. They know the setup on their cars, and they've had success.
Yeah, and not only that, but, we saw Hendrick dominating right out of the shutdown back in May, and we've seen Gibbs and Penske catch up each and every week, and Hendrick all of a sudden not finishing as strong. So I think that's even more of a reason if you're going to leave him off to do it this week, because past histories tell you to do it, and then recent results the last couple of weeks at the tracks have shown Penske and Gibbs gaining, Hendrick dropping. Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Eric Jones are all great on flat tracks. So the one guy that's really tough for me, though, and I'll ask you about this, Rocky, is Kyle Busch. I mean, he once again underperformed at Talladega. I know it's a totally different track, but I went against him with Harvick and Chase Elliott in some head-to matchups. I was going to win both of them, but I had bad luck with Elliott crashing. Kyle Busch has just not been at his level at any track this year. And even though I think he might be the best driver overall, talent-wise, and you would think practice would mean less to a driver like that, I'm starting to think practice means more to Kyle Busch than anyone else. And I've heard him say several times, we haven't had practice to get this or that. I think Kyle Busch really misses the practice. And even though he's a real talent, I think he's a really smart guy too, and he really gets a lot out of the practice sessions. His results just have not been up to par, and they haven't been up to teammates Hamlin and Truex Jr. So I think he's a really tricky driver this week. As Andy mentioned, he has the best average finish the last 2 years at Pocono, 3.5 in 4 races. By the way, Andy, William Byron, if you look at Indianapolis and Pocono combined the last 2 years, 6 races we have, Byron has the best average finish on those tracks combined. So that was definitely an interesting guy to bring up. 4 top 5s out of those 6 races too. But Byron's so tough to trust, so he's been so random this year. And I know, Rocky, I know you faded him this past week, and he actually bit you the one time you faded him. So, Rocky, what are your thoughts on maybe another driver to look at other than Keselowski at Pocono?
I'm not a Kevin Harvick fan, by the way, but I'm going to go with Kevin Harvick. He hasn't won here.
Rocky, it's spelled with a K and not a C, by the way, because you got a C on your hat this week. Good. So I thought maybe you're misspelling Kevin.
Come on, man.
Yeah. Harvick, he has no wins here, but he has 12 top 5s, 18 top 10s in 38 races here at Pocono. Average finish 12.6 at this track, which is very good. in 38 races for sure. Harvick has 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s over the past 2 years here in Pocono, average finish of 9th, which is second best among all drivers over that time period. Harvick's the second hottest driver over the past 10 races with 2 wins and 7 top 10 finishes, average finish of 8.4. I feel like he's going to be running with the big dogs. I agree with Andy. Your Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Eric Jones, Joe Gibbs Racing is the best here, in my opinion. And also William Byron, he showed up on my radar too. But I think Harvick's going to be running with them come Saturday.
Yeah, by the way, you brought up an excellent point, Rocky, about Indianapolis being the sister track. The last 2 years, 2018 and 2019, Kevin Harvick's finished first and fourth at Indianapolis, and he has the best driver rating overall. And then if you look at Pocono here, the last 2 years, we've got 4 races total. The top 5 driver ratings, not average finish, but if you look at the top 5 driver ratings, you have the 4 Gibbs cars are in the top 5 that we mentioned. Busch, Truex, Hamlin, and Jones. But guess who else is in there at number 2 is Harvick. So, yeah, he might not have won here, but he's been very strong here and almost like him better for that reason. We talk about the do factor with Kyle Busch and Harvick every week when they're coming off a bad performance. Kyle Busch just hasn't been right this year, so I'm not applying that to him as much, but Harvick has been right at times. And he's had several races now since Atlanta where he hasn't been the best guy, so yeah, nothing wrong with picking him. And he's almost guaranteed, I think, he's guaranteed to be a top 10, I think almost guaranteed to be a top 5 because this is such a big track at 2.5 miles. It's what makes it such a boring race, unfortunately, but there's also a lot less room for trouble. And you just figure a guy like Kevin Harvick's going to keep his nose clean. So for head-to-head matchups, he's a pretty good pick. Andy, I know you love Harvick. What are your thoughts on that? And maybe give me another driver you're looking at.
Byron is a guy who I put in the category of Eric Jones where they run good. They just had, flat tire at the end or pit stop at the end. I don't take those into account as far as bad setups. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys one of my free picks here. Austin Dillon, top 10, DraftKings. He's 3-1 to finish in the top 10. His finishes at Pocono have been awful in previous years, which I love because he's a different driver in a different car this year. His last 3 finishes at the big tracks, Homestead, Atlanta, and Charlotte, average finish of 8.7. If you're in DraftKings, if you're in fantasy leagues, I'm a big fan of Austin Dillon. I think if you run this race, 30 times, he's going to finish inside the top 10, 13 to 15 of those. So I think 3-1, Austin Dillon top 10. That's a guy I got a real sleeper pick on for some good value.
Yeah, Andy, I like Austin Dillon overall. I liked him a few weeks ago when he was having the baby. It worried me, but he still had a good run in Miami. We mentioned him on the show last week, Talladega, totally different track, but he was running well again, does very well on those. He's actually been a sleeper in a lot of different tracks this year, and I've started to use him a lot more in head-to-head matchups and definitely on fantasy. He's always in that middle price-wise fantasy. You guys, we got about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to get a sleeper maybe from each of you in a head-to-head matchup at the same time. First, I want to let the viewers out there know, once again, half price for the next 12 months of NASCAR picks. It's just an incredible special. No reasoning needed. It's insane. You can get both of these guys for the price of one. Get them both for half price. Get both Rocky and Andy, and it's the price that would only cost for one of them. You get them for the next 12 months. MOTO 50% sign. MOTO 50%. MOTO 50%. Moto 50% gets them both for half price for the next 12 months until next year. All NASCAR picks. Andy Lang is at wagertalk.com, wagertalk.com. Rocky Atkinson at sportsmemo.com, sportsmemo.com. MOTO 50% sign. Moto 50%, half price for the next 12 months of NASCAR picks. Got a few minutes left, guys. Rocky, let me get maybe a sleeper if you have one, and also a head-to-head matchup you're looking at.
All right, my long shot this week is going to be Eric Jones. We've mentioned it. Joe Gibbs Racing, probably the strongest team that's going to be here in Pocono this week. He hasn't won here, but he's got 4 top 5s, 5 top 10 finishes in 6 races here in Pocono. He has the best average finish among all active drivers at 8.3. Over the past 2 years in Pocono, Jones has 3 top 5s, 3 top 10s in those 4 races with an average finish of 9.8. My free head-to-head matchup for the show this week is going to be Ryan Newman over Christopher Bell. Newman has 1 win, 9 top 5 finishes, 15 top 10 finishes in 36 races here in Pocono. He has an average finish of 13.1 at this track, which is very good for the amount of races run. This will be Christopher Bell's first Cup race in Pocono. When checking his Xfinity stats from the past couple of years, his average finish is 20.5 at this track. So we're going to play Ryan Newman over Christopher Bell.
Yeah, Newman, by the way, is a guy that's always been very good on flat tracks. He's run well on a lot of tracks this year. Even after being hospitalized, he still had some good runs. So I've liked Newman on a lot of different tracks. By the way, Eric Jones is around 20-1 to the outright win. So nice little sleeper pick there. William Byron also around that 20-1 range. And Andy's mentioned him a few times. Race favorite right now are Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch, both around 5-1. Rocky mentioned Kevin Harvick earlier. I think of those two, I know Kyle Busch has the best average finish, but he's been really dicey this year. Andy, maybe one more pick for him. You can be a long shot, anybody you're looking at, and also a head-to-head matchup if you got one.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick head-to-head matchup. Denny Hamlin was good without his crew chief. Then he got his crew chief back. I'm not going to fade Denny Hamlin. In fact, I'm going to support him, and I'm going to support him against Chase Elliott. We went over the Gibbs cars. Their track record's been better last year than Hendrick's. So I'll take Denny Hamlin minus 115 against Chase Elliott. Hamlin's crew nailed their setup, the race before Talladega, complete domination. He's got a point to prove. Elliott's great, but for some reason Hendrick struggles on this track. You've seen him start to fade back. So my free pick this week is Hamlin over Elliott. I have 3 more paid picks on wagertalk.com. And then I'll give you a little sleeper play here. We've been talking about it, and for whatever reason, we haven't been betting on it. It's plus 650 now. The same driver to win stage 1 and 2. It's happened 5 out of the last 6 races outside of Talladega. This is a big track. If pit stops go down to the competition caution and stages, you could easily get a guy that nails the setup at the very beginning and gets out and wins stages 1 and 2. You can't argue about a bet that's plus 650 that's happened 5 out of 6 races outside of Talladega. So if you want to sprinkle, $20, $50 or something on it, one driver to win stage 1 and 2. That's my long shot bet.
Yeah, I like it. And they let you take the no at minus 1,400. Please, anybody out there, do not bet the no at minus 1,400. If you don't bet the free play, that's okay. I like it at plus 650, by the way. But please do not take that no at minus 1,430. My goodness. But yeah, it's ironic too, isn't it, Andy? That's all been happening since the shutdown, since they've resumed. That's not a coincidence. So I think there's something going on there. We've seen a lot less cautions overall in these races. And as I mentioned, this is a huge track. It's even more likely to happen here, and it's been happening at the other one. So I like that at plus 650. A great value there for the same driver to win stages 1 and 2. Hey, fantastic show as always, guys. Andy likes Hamlin over Elliott, and Rocky likes Newman as well in his head-to-head matchup. And these are all drivers you can maybe sprinkle in on some of the outrights also. We'll be back next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern next month. We won't see you guys till next month, July 1st, next Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Enjoy the 2 races this weekend at Pocono on Saturday and Sunday. Make some money, and more importantly, save some money while you make money right now with promo code MOTO50%, MOTO 50% sign. Get you both Andy and or Rocky for the next 12 months, half price. Every NASCAR pick they release. Andy Lang is at wagertalk.com, wagertalk.com. Rocky Atkinson is at